Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the BKB National Wool Market Report. Tonight, I have Jacques Taljaard with me to give us feedback on what happened in the stars. And Isak starts at a pre-recorded chat with George de Kock, a well-known vet from Caledon, to find out what needs to be done to prevent a potential Rift Valley fever outbreak. But first, let's have a look what happened in the market this week. We traded higher this week, and the fact that there were no major movement on the exchange rate between the rand and all the major currencies helped us. The rand weakened again today after it gained momentum yesterday and traded at 14 rand 45 against the US dollar. As I said, it fell back today and traded at 14 rand 75 for most part of the auction. We had a small offer of only 7,500 bales for the day, and for the second time in a short period, we saw good competition on the 18 to 20.2 micron groups, and this week they outperformed the finer side of the market, with the gap shrinking a little bit between the two groups. With that being said, the gap are still abnormally large. Jacques, what were your experience in the star room?
Leon, yes, it was an interesting day. I think the main players were the Lesotho's, but we'll get back to that later on. The Locks 1 didn't perform as last week. We saw them in buyer's favor as well as Locks 2s. Well, it was a small offering, so you can expect that they're not going to perform on those types. I think 21, 22 micron, SA Mate Merinos. Yeah, they improved, but there wasn't a very good selection of it. Quality, again, is the main factor that would push the price on those things.
Yeah. As you've said, it was a small auction with only 7,500 bales on offer. So hopefully by catalog 24, that will be a huge catalog or a big catalog again, and then we will have some differences between the types to maybe have a better look what's actually happening.
Bigger selection, that'll push the market always.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacques. And then certified wool of excellent quality were on offer, and again, great competition were experienced. Our market followed the Aussie market, and our early market indicators show an overall increase of 4.5% in the market, excluding the RWS wool. The fact that today were the last day of the Chinese New Year were very evident, with the buyers starting to return, and we experienced good competition. Jacques, another interesting thing that we saw for the past 3 auctions now were that we are experiencing better competition on our neighbors in Lesotho on their wool. What might the reason for that be?
Well, I had a chat with one of the 3 biggest buyers today, and they reckon it's the selection, it's a better quality, and it's the areas. If you look at the areas that we're selling today, Leribi, Moaleshoek, Tabateka, and that's always been good quality producing wool areas in Lesotho. So yeah, again, it's the selection, it's the packet that's been offered today.
Okay, but with that being said, well done to the Lesotho breeders for delivering an excellent product that's competing in the market. Well done, you guys. Then I would just like to thank all the buyers who took part in today's auction, and to mention the 3 buyers who bought the most bales. They are Standard Wool, Modiano, and Lempriere. Jacques, you had a look at the producers who achieved the highest prices. If you could mention something there.
Yeah. Well, a small offering, we still got quite expensive prices, especially Picky Ace. And he had 3 lots there that sold excellent. And then Rocher van Heerden with his 2 bales of bee agates, excellent prices. Congratulations on Stuken and Standard Wool that bought those expensive wools.
Congratulations to the producers. Then we will go over to Isak Staats and to have a listen to the pre-recorded chat that he had with George de Kok. So over to you, Isak.
Good evening, everybody. We have the privilege of talking to Dr. George de Kok tonight. He was the previous chairman of Cape Wools and also a well-known veterinarian in Caledon. George, welcome. Thank you for talking to us tonight. You and I have been talking about Rift Valley fever. Please give us an indication of what the probabilities are of having a Rift Valley fever outbreak this year.
Yeah, it appears from the rainfall figures that I've been looking at in the areas that normally host the carrier mosquito, and the rainfall figures in those areas have been above normal, and that normally leads to a Rift Valley fever outbreak. So I would say that the climatic conditions are ideal for an outbreak this autumn. I would be surprised if there isn't an outbreak. So, but if you look at it historically, going back to in the last 40 years, there have been 2 major outbreaks. The one was in the early 70s or in the mid 70s, and the other one was in 2010-11. And in both cases, the big outbreaks were preceded by smaller outbreaks that were isolated. So I would suspect that we will see smaller localized outbreaks in the coming months. I hope I'm wrong, but that is the trend that happened in the last 2 major outbreaks since 1970. And it makes sense if you look at the epidemiology of the mosquito and the disease. So yes, I think we are in a high risk time period coming up. Yes.
Doctor, so what can our producers do to prevent it on their farm specifically? Apart from inoculation, that's a topic that's a whole topic on its own. But in terms of farming practices, what can they do to act proactively?
Well, it's like one has to understand the mosquito and that carries the virus, and one has to go back to the reason why the outbreak occurs at such long time intervals and why it occurs with high rainfall in those specific areas. And I think that there's consensus that in South Africa there's a specific Aedes mosquito that carries the virus, and when it lays the eggs, it passes the virus into the eggs, and those eggs are buried on the outskirts of pans. And only once those pans are flooded do those mosquitoes hatch, and they start biting sheep, and the sheep, the virus replicates in the sheep, and so you get a replication of the virus. So the virus builds up over a period of months around those pans. What I'm saying is, after the first big rains, a few mosquitoes hatch that do carry the virus, but their life cycles are quite short, a couple of weeks. So within a few months, those mosquitoes have infected sheep, got reinfected, laid eggs, those eggs hatch, and so you have an escalation and a build-up of viruses in the area. Now, if you look at those mosquitoes, they normally attack at dawn and dusk. And they don't fly very far from the pans. So what the farmer can do, if he has pans on his farm, is make sure that the sheep are not in camps close to the pans. And if they have to be there, try and move them to high-lying areas in the late afternoon and only graze those wet areas during the height of the day, if it's possible. That is one thing one can do, is to understand that the mosquitoes are active at dusk and at dawn. The other thing is that a farmer must realize is that lambs are much more susceptible than adults. So I would recommend, if you're lambing in autumn and late summer, have your lambing camps again at high-lying areas away from the pans, so that you don't expose the lambs to it's not only those mosquitoes, muggies and other mosquitoes also attack lambs, and they can actually kill them just from blood loss. So it's always a good practice in a wet autumn to lamb away from the pans and the standing water. So those are two things that a farmer can do proactively. They did, during the last outbreak, use insect repellent sprays on the animals. It may help if it's effective, but I mean, that's for a farmer to decide. So the big thing is to get the animals away from the mosquitoes. I think that is the first thing they can do. If you want to talk about the vaccinations, we can move on to that.
Well, talk to us about the vaccination. I know that we don't have any. We only have live inoculant at the moment. Most of our ewes are pregnant at the moment. What must our producers do?
So if your ewes are pregnant, then, as I said, your best option is to plan your lambing so that it occurs at high-lying, drier camps. So I think that is important. But again, I want to stress that I suspect that the outbreaks this year won't be as serious as it was during the peak of 2010-11. So I wouldn't now take a risk to vaccinate pregnant ewes with a live vaccine. I think the risk of malformed lambs or even abortions that the live vaccine may cause is greater than the risk of virus of naturally induced abortion. So I wouldn't go the way of vaccinating pregnant ewes. I would rather wait till they've lambed, and then at 6 weeks I would vaccinate the lambs with the live vaccine, and that way you protect the lambs from being infected and dying, because the lambs are extremely susceptible. So if you can protect the lambs as soon as possible, which I would say 5 to 6 weeks after lambing, vaccinate the lambs, and then you can actually vaccinate the ewe with the lamb as well, because then she's obviously lambed, and then your ewe is protected as well. What happened in 2018, we had an isolated outbreak, and it occurred late April, well, sort of 10th to the 12th, around middle April, the sheep got sick. So they were infected maybe beginning of April. So these outbreaks normally occur in autumn. So if you've got lambs now at foot, vaccinate them now. Then they'll be protected. The protection will kick in about 3 weeks' time after vaccination. If you can get hold of the dead vaccine, which apparently is not available, then you can vaccinate your pregnant ewes. But while we're talking on vaccination, and while I'm again emphasizing that I suspect next year, if we have another wet summer next year, then as I've already explained, you start getting viral replication this year. The mosquitoes hatch, they infect sheep, low virus titer. The sheep don't show any symptoms, but the virus replicates in the sheep. More mosquitoes are infected, they lay eggs. So you start building up a viral reservoir around the pans this year. Next year, if we have another big rain, there's a big outbreak. So use this coming winter to get hold of your live vaccine. Place your orders now so that OBP can start manufacturing, and use this winter to protect your flock against next year's major outbreak if it follows the pattern of 2009, 2010, and 2011. I think it's important that we use this time to prepare for next year's crisis and try and avoid it.
Doctor, can you inoculate with blue tongue, because it's the same circumstances also now with the change in season?
Yeah, in fact, I would definitely not do that. Even especially because we've only got the live vaccine available. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. So no, absolutely not. Even your blue tongue are quite a number of strains to start with, and the best effect with your blue tongue vaccination is to actually spread it over 3 vaccinations. So to then add another one, and it's quite an expensive one, well, it doesn't make sense, because you're going to dilute the effect of your blue tongue vaccine, and you're going to dilute the effect of your rift vaccine. So you'll get poor results with both vaccinations. I wouldn't do it. No, sorry?
No, sorry?
No, carry on.
No, good. So please, we're going to have to wrap it up. So just your parting message to our producers.
What I would do if I was to farm, and this is important, again, we haven't mentioned that yet. The high-risk areas are well known, and farmers will remember the last outbreak. If you were one of the farmers or farms who were affected during the first year, the first big year was 2010. After that, it spread outside the normal area, and that also happens, and there are reasons for that. But if you were affected in the first year, then you're a high-risk area, and then you are at much higher risk than farmers who only got affected the year later or never got infected at all. So if you weren't affected in the last outbreak, I wouldn't worry now. I will not, especially if there's a shortage of vaccines, I wouldn't make use of that. I mean, it's not wrong to do it. But if you are a farmer in Malmesbury, I wouldn't now panic and vaccinate. I'd rather leave the vaccines to the farmers where the epidemic starts is in the Free State, the western part of the Eastern Cape, the northwestern part, in other words, from Middelburg up north, and then the eastern part of the Northern Cape, the eastern districts. I'm convinced that if one can block the initial outbreak, in other words, if those farmers use this winter to protect their sheep, then the outbreak expressed sufficiently so that it doesn't spread further than that. If one doesn't block it there, then it spreads. It spreads south and west. So my advice to a farmer is, if you're in those areas, go to your co-op or your veterinarian, get hold of the vaccine while it's available. If it's not available, place an order so that you can use the winter to vaccinate all your adult youths who aren't pregnant. And if you're really in a high-risk area, if you were affected last time, vaccinate those youths twice. In other words, give them a double dose about 6 weeks apart, 6 weeks or 3 months apart, so that you get a booster. Again, I may be wrong, but I believe that there is such a thing as a challenge that overcomes a low protection. So if you've got poor protection through using the vaccine badly, or maybe the vaccine got a bit overheated in the kraal, and you get a high challenge of the virus will overcome that protection. So it's best to give that twice so that you can give a booster, protect your sheep better. That is my advice. But if you can get hold of the live vaccine, start vaccinating now. Start with your non-pregnant animals. Start with your youths first, and your hoggers, your young animals first, then your older animals, and then your almos. So you prioritize it accordingly. If you're going to send your sheep to a feedlot soon, then probably your almos, then don't vaccinate them. You rather use it on your breeding stock. But if you can get hold of the live vaccine, don't delay. The sooner you start, the better.
Dr. De Kock, thank you so much for your time. We highly appreciate it, and we'll make sure that the message gets out there as wide as possible.
Thank you, Jacques, Isak, and George. Thanks a lot for your input. Then we had the production auctions this week, a few excellent production auctions, and I would like to invite everyone who still needs some rams to have a look out for next week's auction. Some top quality rams coming into the market in next week's auctions. So feel free to join us on the digital platform or to join the auction on the day. Thank you to everyone listening. And then our next wool auction will be on the 24th of February. And after the auction, we will have a report ready regarding the week's price movements. Thank you and good evening to everyone.